Welcome to Macon Memories. I'm Lynda Wright at Randolph-Macon College, and today is July 24th, 2014. Today I'm speaking with Coach Paul Webb, who was basketball coach at the college from 1956 to 1975. Welcome, Coach Webb. I was wondering if you could give us a little bit of background where you grew up and your early years and lead us up to how you happened to come to Randolph-Macon.
Yeah. Well, Lynda, I was born in Petersburg, Virginia, raised there, went to school, played athletics at Petersburg High School, and when I graduated from Petersburg High School in 1946, went to William & Mary, was there for 4 years, was captain of the baseball team, played there for 4 years, and also played basketball for 2 years. When I graduated from William & Mary in 1951, started looking for a job and had 2 job offers. One was in Norfolk, Virginia at James Blair Junior High School, and the other one was at Highland Springs High School, just outside of Richmond. The job at James Blair was teaching physical education. The job at Highland Springs was teaching physical education, but also doing some coaching. And at the time, I thought I might be interested in going into coaching, so I decided to take the job at Highland Springs. First year I was at Highland Springs, I was the assistant coach in all 3 sports, football, baseball, and basketball. We were in an old school at the time. A new school was under construction. Spring of the first year that I was at Highland Springs, athletic director, who was also the football coach and the basketball coach, called me in, and he was a football guy. Just coached basketball because they needed somebody to coach it. And he said to me, we're moving into the new school next year. Would you like to coach basketball? He said, I want to get out of coaching basketball. I'm a football guy. He said, but before you answer my question, I just want to let you know that if you take the basketball head coaching job, you're going to get paid $150 more than you got paid this year. Mm-hmm. I said, I'll take it.
Sounds good.
So that's how I got into coaching coaching basketball. Coached basketball at Highland Springs High School for 4 years. And the summer at the end of those 4 years, I was coaching the American Legion baseball team. This was probably late June. And we had practice one day out on the baseball field. And a friend of mine who was a sporting goods salesman came over and he said, "Can I speak to you a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Would you be interested in talking to the people at Randolph-Macon about the Randolph-Macon basketball job?" Well, the Randolph-Macon basketball job had become open in April, and I was aware of that. And I hadn't done anything about it. I was just simply aware that it was open. I said, well, yeah, I might be. So he said, I was out there this morning, and they asked me if I would say something to you. Coach Hugh Stevens. I said, well, I know Coach Stevens. And he said, well, let me go back and tell him that you do have some interest, which he did. And shortly after that, Hugh Stevens called me, and I came out for an interview and went through the campus, and we talked. And then he called me back and asked me to come up to meet with the president, Dr. Moreland, and we met. And late July, early August, I was offered the job and took the job. So that's my story as to how I got to Randolph-Macon.
Wow, that's great. So you were at Highland Springs for 4 years. So you you got to see a whole group of boys go through there, and I understand at least one of them I know ended up coming to Randolph-Macon.
As a matter of fact, Doug Salmon.
Yeah.
Doug Salmon played for me at Highland Springs, and Doug graduated from Highland Springs 1953, I think, about that time. And I helped him get a little financial aid here at Randolph-Macon. And 2 years later, I was offered a job here at Randolph-Macon. And, of course, when I came here, Doug was still here. Yeah. And so I had an opportunity to coach him on the college level for 2 years.
That's great. Well, now, when you came to Randolph-Macon, you mentioned Coach Stevens. You came to coach basketball, but didn't you also coached, I think, did you coach track as well?
I coached track and I coached cross country.
Yeah, tell us about how that worked.
When I was hired, I think, as a basketball coach. First day I came to work, first part of September, I walked in the office, and of course we were over in the old gym, the alumni gym. Had one coach's office, had one telephone, had one radiator. So I walked in and I looked around, and there were 3 desks in the office. Hugh Stevens was sitting at the desk in the corner. Paul Severin, who was a football coach, was sitting at the desk in the other corner. Joe McCutcheon, Paul Severin's assistant football coach, and Joe also was a swimming coach, was sitting at the other desk. So I looked around and didn't see any more desks. So I saw there was a little chair sitting over there by Hugh's desk. Had a little armrest on it, so I went over and I brought some books in with me. So I put my books under the chair and sat down. And that was my desk from the 1st of September until the first part of December. Paul Severin was in the insurance business and was hired at Randolph-Macon just during football season, just to coach football. So when football season was over, Paul left and went back to selling insurance, and I inherited his desk up until the next September when he came back, and then I moved to the chair again, and that went on for about 2 years, and then Paul retired from coaching football, and I got the desk. But getting back to cross country and track, about a week after I was there, Coach Stevens said, "Now you're the cross country coach and the track coach also." And I said, "Well, I didn't really know that and didn't remember that, but I was 27 years old at the time, and I said, if that's what I'm supposed to do, I guess that's what I'd better do." I knew nothing about cross country. So I went out and got me a couple of books and read up a little bit on what cross country was about. So I coached cross country probably, I want to say 8 to 10 years maybe.
Wow.
And then track for 2 or 3 years until Ted Keller was hired, 1958, because I came in 1956. And when Ted came in, they gave him the head track job, and then I went over and started helping Hugh Stevens coach baseball. But I was the track coach and the cross country coach both. Track coach for 2 years and cross country about 10, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I think that speaks, it says a lot about coaching. I mean, a lot of what you're doing is not just teaching the sport, but motivation and other skills that I guess can cross over from sport to sport.
Well, at the time, Randolph-Macon had a small coaching staff, more sports than we had coaches, and so everybody had to do more than their particular sport. And we all pitched in, and I know that the soccer and the tennis teams were both coached by a couple of faculty members. So there were a number of people that were involved in coaching all the sports.
Well, you were in the alumni gym, the one that is. Was the old gym still on campus at that time? What they refer to as the old gym, the one that's no longer here? Yeah,
the old gym was still here, and some of the alumni who played in that old gym would come back and tell a lot of stories about their experiences in that old gym. I never had the opportunity to coach a team in the old gym. We played in the alumni gym, which now a lot of people refer to as the old gym.
Right.
But the original old gym was still here on campus, yeah.
Yeah.
I was there.
Well, in the alumni gym, where do the spectators sit? Because it looks like unless it's reconfigured, it's a different configuration now.
Yeah, it was different. The court was a lot narrower than it is now. When they renovated the building and everything, they made the court wider. Of course, it had the track up around the basketball court. They put about, I think, maybe 4 rows of bleachers, portable bleachers on each side, and on occasion would put a few bleachers on one of the end zones, one of the ends, to put some more students, some more fans in there. But once we got to having a pretty good basketball team, game were at 8 o'clock. I'd go over there at 4:30. Students were it was packed.
Wow.
Students would come early, bring
spot.
books, bring cards, just to get a seat to see the games,
Yeah.
and up on the old track.
Yeah.
That would be about 3 or 4 deep on the track. Yeah.
Wow.
Did not hold many people, but it was packed.
Yeah, that must have been a very exciting atmosphere because everyone was so close.
Oh, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the visiting teams that came in, of course, back then there were a lot of schools that had gyms similar
Yes.
to Alumni Gym.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when teams came here, most teams, when they came here, it wasn't like they had this big gym on their campus, and everywhere they went to play was this large gym, and then all of a sudden they're playing in a cracker box around Macon.
Right.
But it was cozy.
Yeah.
It was.
That's good, but exciting, I'm sure.
Very.
Right. Well, can you talk a little bit about how the recruiting process? That's such a big part of a coach's job.
When I first came here, my recruiting budget was $200 a year, which didn't go very far. Went a lot further than $200 does today, but didn't go very far. And so I started out and subscribed to probably about 10 different newspapers. From subscription would be from like December through March during basketball season. And every morning when the mail came in, on my desk would be 10 newspapers, and I'd go through them and pull out the sports section, throw the rest of the paper away, and scan down through the box scores from any of the basketball games being played that had write-ups in those particular papers. I subscribed to Richmond Times-Dispatch, Roanoke Paper, Raleigh newspaper, Washington paper, Philadelphia paper, 102 in New Jersey. Just picked out newspapers from the areas that we felt that we wanted to try to recruit players. And when I'd find a player who'd scored a lot of points, or a player that got a lot of rebounds, or gotten a positive write-up about something, maybe for defense, I'd send him a letter, send him a questionnaire. If he filled the questionnaire in and sent it back, then we'd follow up with another letter and information. And that's how the recruiting process started. It was really a matter of trying to make a contact with as many players as we possibly could, and then try to follow up either by going to see them play, or getting somebody else to see them play for us, or a recommendation from their coach, and trying to decide whether any of those players, or which of those players, would fit into Randolph-Macon.
Very good. Well, you built a really great program. I think I read that before you came, Randolph-Macon hadn't had a winning season in X number of years. And how long was it once you got here before you were able to see the program sort of turn around or start to build?
First year I came, as I said earlier, I took the job about end of July, 1st of August. Had a player at Highland Springs that was playing for me, Jerry Sewers, and Jerry was planning on going to William and Mary, not knowing that I was going to be leaving Highland Springs to come to Randolph-Macon. But when I decided to come to Randolph-Macon, about 2 or 3 days after I decided to do that, there was a knock on my door, and there was Jerry, and he said, "Coach, I need to talk to you. Could I come to Randolph-Macon?" And I said, "Well, Jerry, I thought you were going to William Mary." He said, "Well, you're going to Randolph-Macon. I'd like to go to Randolph-Macon too." So Jerry Sewers decided to not go to William Mary, but to come to Randolph-Macon. So he was the only player that I was able to recruit the first year. The other players that we had on the team the first year that I was here were the players that had been on the team the year before. One of them Jimmy Smith was a senior, was captain of the team, and I had known him because he was from Petersburg also. So I knew Jimmy, and so the first year was just the starting of a rebuilding program. That spring started recruiting Carl Koenig, who came the second year that I was here. And I think Carl Koenig was probably the player that was responsible for starting to get the basketball program at Randolph-Macon turned around. Carl was out of the service and just a very, very fine young man and a good player. And we had a winning season that year, and then the following year, 1958-59, Buddy Allen came to Randolph-Macon and several other players, and that was the third year that I was here. We won what was then the Little Eight, or Virginia Small College Championship that year. And from that point on, the program just sort of started to take off.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, can you talk about some various aspects of coaching? Did you spend most of your time working on, plays and strategy, or team building, or just basic drills? How did?
Well, we emphasized, first of all, fundamentals, knowing how to play the game. And then our primary emphasis was on defense, trying to have a good, solid defensive team. And then from there we went to offense. I felt that if a team had to be a good defensive team in order to be a good team. And there's an awful lot of discipline attached to defense, more so than to offense, toughness. And we did have pretty good defensive teams most of the years when I was here.
Well, you had some great seasons and some great teams, and your a wonderful overall record. And I just want to state for the record here that when you retired in 1985, finally from ODU, you were Virginia's all-time winningest coach, if that's a word, winningest. So, which was really, you had a great run. Can you talk a little bit about the conferences we were in? You mentioned the Little Eight. Can you talk?
Yeah, we were in one legitimate organized conference, which was the Mason-Dixon. Mason-Dixon Conference had, I want to say, maybe 16 teams in it. Most of the small colleges from Virginia, Randolph-Macon, Hampton-Sydney, Ridgewater, Lynchburg, Roanoke. Those. And then Catholic University, American University, Mount St. Mary's, Loyola College in Baltimore, University of Baltimore, Washington College, Johns Hopkins. They were most of the teams that made up the Mason-Dixon Conference, and it was a good basketball conference. 1964-65, we won the Mason-Dixon Conference Championship, which was the first time that a Virginia school had ever won the Mason-Dixon championship. The conference was very much dominated by the northern schools, and it was really a good basketball conference. At the time, the NCAA was divided into two divisions, which were called the University Division, which were the larger schools, Virginia Tech, Richmond, those schools, and then the College Division, which were the smaller schools. Now the NCAA has three divisions, but they have Division I, larger schools, Division II, middle-sized schools, and Division III, of which Randolph-Macon is a member now in the ODAC. But that was the official NCAA conference that we were a member of. And then in the state of Virginia had two mythical leagues. Big Five, which was composed of at the time, the 5 largest schools in Virginia, Virginia Tech, Richmond, William Murray, and VMI. They were the 5 large schools. And then and that was called the Big Five. And then the Little 8 were the 8 smaller schools. Yeah. And it was just sort of a mythical championship. Larger schools played each other, smaller schools played each other, and kept one-loss record and declared a champion at the end of the year.
So I didn't know that about the NCAA. There were just 2 divisions up until when now we have D1, D2, D3. You don't hear much about D2. You hear all the D1 schools, the big schools, and then Division III. There are lots, but
there are not many. There are not many Division II schools in Virginia. The Division II schools in Virginia, Virginia Union, Virginia State, are both Division II schools. I'm not sure about Longwood, but most of there are a lot of Division II schools in North Carolina, Tennessee, and as you get out towards into the Midwest. Yeah.
Well, your time at Randolph-Macon, 56 to 75, you saw a lot of changes at the college, lots of changes in the campus and physical changes we could talk about, but significant changes in the student body. And you witnessed a couple of big changes. Do you want to talk about when the school went co-ed in 1971?
Yeah. Of course, Randolph-Macon was originally an all-male school, and I think late 60s, late 60s. Right after the war, veterans started coming back, and I think a lot of schools experienced some financial difficulties and other problems, and in a way to solve some existing problems, I think Randolph-Macon decided to go co-ed, I think, 1971 maybe?
71.
I remember it was in January during the exam time. During exams, we never practiced during exams, that exam week. Exams were very big and very important, and just felt like players and all students needed time just to concentrate on their exams. So I would always take the exam week and go on the road recruiting. And I remember I was up in New Jersey, some hotel, and about 8 o'clock in the morning, telephone in my room rang, and who in the world's calling me at 8 o'clock in the morning? It was Jay Pace. Jay had been my basketball manager, I think from 1964 through 1967, something like that. And it's an interesting story about how Jay Pace came to Randolph-Macon. But Jay called me and he said, "Coach, I just thought you wanted to know that last night the trustees voted to make Randolph-Macon co-ed." And that's how I found out about it. And my first thought and reaction probably was not a positive one. But I think it's one of the best moves that Randolph-Macon made. I think the college now is so healthy, and I'm not sure that Randolph-Macon would have survived financially had they not gone co-ed back in 1971.
I'm sure it didn't feel that way at the time, but it probably was a saving
there
move.
were obviously a lot of people that weren't too much in favor of that.
Right.
But turned out to be a great decision.
Right. Well, just if we can segue for a minute, I would like to hear the story about how Jay Pace came to Randolph-Macon, because I can't ask him, so tell me.
No. There was a basketball game in the old Richmond Arena. Manchester was playing Douglas Freeman, and I was recruiting a couple of players off of both of those teams. So I asked Hugh Stevens. I said, "Hugh, I'm going in to see Manchester and Douglas Freeman play tonight. You want to ride along? He and I live right next door to each other. He said, yeah. So we go to the game, and we're sitting up in the stands at the old Richmond Arena and watching the game. And about halfway through the second half, Hugh said, well, who do you see that you really like? And I said, Hugh, see that Douglas Freeman bench over there? He said, yeah. I said, see that little kid behind that bench waving that towel and yelling and screaming? He says, yeah. I said, that's the one I really like. So after the game, I walked over to the Douglas Freeman bench, and this little kid was over there collecting dirty towels and what he had to do. So I walked up to him and I said, excuse me. I said, my name's Coach Webb, and I coach basketball at Randolph-Macon. I said, what is your name? He said, my name's Jay Pace. And I said, he was the manager of Douglas Freeman basketball team. I said, Jay, are you thinking about going to college? And he said, yes, sir. And I said, where are you thinking about going? He said, well, I'm thinking about Randolph-Macon. I said, Jay, how would you like to come to Randolph-Macon and be the basketball manager for the next 4 years? He said, oh, Coach, I'd love to do that. I said, well, have you been accepted yet? He said, no. He said, I've applied, but I haven't been accepted. So the next morning, I was sitting at the doorstep of the admissions office when they walked in at 8 o'clock. And Bill Robinson was the director of admissions at the time. I said, Bill, look to see if you have an application from a kid named Jay Pace at Douglas Freeman. So he went through the files. He said, yeah, here it is right here. I said, what kind of student is he? He said, oh, it's a good student. I said, has he been accepted yet? He said, no. He hadn't gotten to the committee yet. And I said, do you think he will be? Will be accepted? He said, oh, yeah, I think so. I said, can you get him accepted today? He said, yeah. So I called Jay that night. I said, Jay, you are accepted, and you'll get your official acceptance letter in the next couple of days. Do you want to come to Randolph-Macon? He said, yeah, Coach, I would love to come to Randolph-Macon. That's the story of how Jay Pace came to Randolph-Macon.
Wow, and he was your basketball manager
for
the next 4 years?
He was a basketball manager for 4 years, and while he was a basketball manager, he met his wife, Pat, who was a student up at Murray, Washington, and she used to come down on Saturday nights for the games, and when the game was over, Jay would take care of all his managerial duties of getting all the uniforms together and towels together and cleaning up the locker room. And Pat would sit outside in the bleachers right there by the door and wait for him to come out.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah. That's a great story. Yeah. That's wonderful. And then, of course, he was so committed to Ashland, too.
He was. Jay was dearly in love with Randolph-Macon, and then with Ashland, and just a fine person. And what a tragedy it was that he had to pass away at such an early age. Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm glad to know. I did not know that you were responsible for getting him
here.
And
as a matter of fact, I'm my wife and I are godparents for Jay's oldest son, Chris.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Well, you're very, very close to that family. That's great. Very good. Well, you talked about when you first heard that the college was going co-ed, your immediate thought was not positive. How did it affect? Just think about athletics, and Title IX was coming out about the same time that we went co-ed. Did it immediately affect your department? I mean, you were coaching men's basketball, but just what were the ramifications as when it came?
Title IX really didn't come on the scene until several years later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that was later.
Several years later. And Rachel Anderson was hired to coach the women's sports and women's PE teacher. She was the first women's coach here at Randolph-Macon. And really, there was no conflict at all between the men's program and the women's program, from the standpoint of use of facilities, whatever. And it was not a problem at all, no.
Okay,
we all got along with it. And the women's program obviously went through a lot of growing pains for first few years.
Yeah,
you're starting from scratch. You go in co-ed, you have no female students on campus.
Yeah, nothing to feel.
You got to get them in first, and then the athletes
Right,
included in that group of females. So it took a while, for Randolph-Macon women's teams to develop and to
Sure.
to get solid.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Right. I did an interview with Rachel Anderson and Carol LaHaye.
Oh, did you?
Early on, so
Yeah.
I did hear some of that story.
Yeah.
About the building. And that. Yeah.
No.
All right, very good. Well, I would like to talk a little bit about another change in the student body that happened before the women came that was very quiet and not, nearly as, didn't have the fallout that the going co-ed did. But you were a coach here when the first African-American students came on campus. That's when the college was all male. And I understand that basketball, your recruiting process, was part of really enabling some, good students to come. So could you talk a little bit about that, how that came about, and how the college accepted your recruiting black students and just their experience? Or can you speak to that?
I think it was about 1966, 67. Dr. Moreland called me in one day, and he said, college needs to integrate. We need to get some African-American students in our student body. And he said, talk to the board, and we think that the best way to do it, to have the first African-American student accepted, would be through him being an athlete. And we think that the direction to go in that way is through basketball. He said, do you think you could go out and find a good African-American basketball player who's a good student, who's a good person, and who will be a credit and an asset to Randolph-Macon? I said, well, I don't know. We'll try. And he said, I can't remember how he put it, but finances will not be an issue.
You could offer some good scholarships.
Financial aid would be available. So I said, So I went out and started looking, and found a young man by the name of Dennis Howard, who was playing at Washington and Lee High School up in Arlington. Dennis was a 6'4", 6'5" forward, and he's the one that was the first one that was recruited to come to Randolph-Macon. And he ended up being captain of the team his senior year. He ended up being president of the student body. So he ended up being a good person to break the barrier. I think that same year, after Dennis Howard was recruited to come to Randolph-Macon, I think Ted Keller recruited Howard Stevens, football player, who came in at the same time. And I think that I'm correct on that. And I think Howard may have been the first African-American to play athletics here.
Oh, because the season.
Because of the seasons. Yep. I think he may have been the first. Dennis Howard was the first one to be recruited and to be accepted for admission. But then I think Howard came the same year and ended up actually playing before Dennis did because of the season.
So he wasn't recruited to play football. He just was accepted.
No, he was recruited to play.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and I think that was the same year. I'm not positive on that, but I think that was the case.
They were definitely here.
Yeah, I know that Dennis was the first one, to be recruited.
Yeah. Well, how did that work on the team? Was just talking from the basketball side, obviously, was Dennis immediately accepted, or did you have any pushback?
No problems.
No problems.
No problems at all. Yeah.
Had many of your team members played in integrated high schools that you knew of? Because that could make a big difference if they'd already
Don't know. Never thought about it, to be honest with you. Don't know whether they were or not. I would say in all probability, yes. Yeah.
So wasn't a problem as far as the team.
No.
Did you have any problems when you traveled to other schools?
No.
No. So
No.
all the teams.
Actually, a lot of other schools already had black kids.
So Randolph-Macon was a little bit behind the curve, maybe.
Yeah.
We weren't. It wasn't cutting edge at that
No,
point.
Randolph-Macon was, for an example, Randolph-Macon was not the first school in the Mason-Dixon Conference
Right.
to recruit an African American.
Right.
Probably was not the first player in the Little Eight.
Right.
Small schools in Virginia.
Right.
Probably was not. I don't know. I mean, I don't remember what other teams may have had some black kids. I know that Bridgewater had some. Whether they came before Dennis did or not, I just don't remember.
So it wasn't an issue when you went to other places.
No.
There was about the same sort of mix in those little schools.
No,
Yeah.
no problems at all.
That's good. Yeah. All right. Very good. Well, now I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got your camp to attend to, but I did want to just touch on something you mentioned about you were a PE instructor. So a full member of the faculty. You want to talk a little bit about that teaching part, not basketball, but teaching students?
Well, then Dr. Moreland was president, and Dr. Moreland felt very strongly that all the coaches should be members of the faculty and not just coaches, not separate and apart from the rest of the faculty and academic community. So we all were expected to go to faculty meetings when we were not in the middle of our seasons.
Yeah.
We're expected to take part in all faculty events and so forth. Marched in graduation.
Yeah.
Processed and did all that, and we all had faculty rank. When I left Randolph-Macon, I was a full professor with tenure, which I had to consider that
when you were leaving,
whether to leave or not. But I was a full professor with tenure, and in fact, Dr. Moreland always gave an award at commencement to the outstanding faculty member of the year. And it was not announced until the commencement ceremony. And the last year I was here at Randolph-Macon, Dal Wooten and I, who taught English, we always processed together. And we were sitting there side by side during the ceremony, and Dr. Moreland got ready to announce the outstanding faculty member of the year and announced my name. Dal was an English professor, and I was in the PE department, and I can remember the expression on Dal's face when Dr. Moreland announced that. But that was really a tremendous honor to me for that. And at the time, I didn't know that was going to be my last year at Randolph-Macon, because I had made no plans at the time to leave. But we were all considered faculty members. Treated just like any other faculty member, and had faculty status.
Well, that's quite an honor. That's quite an honor.
As far as teaching PE, physical education was required for 2 years. It was a 2-year requirement for graduation. Most of the students who took PE took it during their freshman and sophomore years. So it was a requirement, and all the coaches taught required physical education. We worked it out within the department to try to, during our seasons, not have as heavy a teaching load as we did during the off season. But we all of us had to teach physical education, and then several years after I came here, they put in the curriculum a coaching class because Randolph-Macon at the time had a lot of their graduates that went into coaching. So they put in a coaching class, which was a 3-hour academic credit class. Fall semester was basketball and baseball. Excuse me. And the spring semester was football and track, I guess. And the first half of that semester, I taught the academic, taught the basketball part of the class, and then Hugh Stevens taught the baseball, and then the football coaches and the track coaches, taught the class in the in the spring. So we did have some teaching responsibilities, not a full academic load like the rest of the faculty members did.
Right.
But we did have to do some teaching.
Well,
One of my students was Macon Brock.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
In the coaching class?
No,
just in a PE
class.
in a regular
Yeah,
PE class.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I remember Macon. That's when I first met Macon. Yeah. 64.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Well, just so we can bring it up to the present, our current basketball coach is an alum, although he came through Randolph-Macon after you left, Nathan Davis. But did you want to reflect on the changes you see when you come back and the basketball program today compared to just the way it was then, or somehow bring it up to the present?
Well, no question, but that the basketball program today is in great hands with Nathan Davis. Nathan is an outstanding coach, and as equally an outstanding person. I think he's a good, tremendous fit for Randolph-Macon. Done a fabulous job, and going back a little bit before Nathan, when I left, Hal Nunley, who had been my assistant for 3 or 4 years, became the head coach, and Hal had a great career at Randolph-Macon. And then when Hal retired, Mike Rhodes, who was his assistant, took over, kept the program going at the same level, and then Nathan. And of course, Nathan played for Coach Nunley when he was a student here at Randolph-Macon. But I try to follow I follow the program and follow the team. Try to see as many games as I can, and Nathan's just doing a great job.
Yes.
And
I guess when I came, Mike Rhodes was coaching, but we've had great basketball teams, men and women, ever since I've been here. For the last
and
10
then
years.
of course Carol
It's been
LaHaye.
great.
Carol's won over 500 games.
Yeah.
And what a tremendous accomplishment that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you left Randolph-Macon in 1975, and you went to Old Dominion and coached there for 10 years. Did you? So you finally got to Norfolk. You didn't go to Blair Middle School, but
No,
you ended up finally ending your career there. Did you want to speak about that a little bit? Or?
Well, first of all, the 19 years that I spent and my family spent here at Randolph-Macon and Ashland was a tremendous part of our lives. It was great. We raised our family here. Great place, Randolph-Macon and Ashland, to raise a family. And at one point, I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life at Randolph-Macon. Charlotte and I, my wife Charlotte and I, we both always enjoyed the beach, and many times during the summer, we'd get up at 5:30 in the morning, get in the car at 6, and be on the beach at 8 o'clock. Then Virginia Beach, spend the day, and get in the car and drive home. And then when the opportunity came up to go to Old Dominion, the location appealed to us to live near the ocean. Old Dominion was a up and coming basketball program. We had played them. Started playing Old Dominion when Old Dominion was still the Norfolk Division of William Murray. Started playing them back in 1957, 58 when I first came here. And so I was familiar with the school. I was familiar with the program and everything, and got to thinking about the fact that it would be a step up in in basketball as far as the level of competition and the league and so forth. And it was a tough decision whether to stay here at Randolph-Macon and continue to coach basketball at Randolph-Macon in a place that we really loved. Was full professor, had tenure.
Yeah, hard.
But
right.
Decided to make the move. Our middle son Eddie had played for me the last 4 years. That I played on the basketball team the last 4 years I was here, and he had just graduated, 1975. Our youngest son Doug was a student here at Randolph-Macon. He was finishing his sophomore year. And our daughter was going to enter junior high that next fall, and we figured that if I was going to make a move, that her going into junior high was a good time in her life to do that. So just decided to make the move,
and that was a good.
Can't really tell you exactly why, but it turned out to be a good move. As I look back on it. Loved every minute I was here at Randolph-Macon. I have no regrets about staying here for 19 years, but also have no regrets about leaving and taking the position at Old Dominion.
And building a program there.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to do that again at a different level, different place and situation, but you obviously were gifted at building a program, and that was good.
Well, when I first went to Old Dominion was in Division II,
right?
Just like Randolph-Macon was at the time. Randolph-Macon was in Division II at the time, and so was Old Dominion. And Old Dominion had planned to move into Division I about 2 years after I took the job. We actually moved in Division I the second year after I took the job there. But it gave me an opportunity to try to, build the program at a different level.
Very good. Well, I want to just thank you so much for coming and sharing your memories today. I know you've got the Paul Webb basketball camp to get to. You've got lots of young basketball players that you're still influencing right across the street, and I don't want to hold you up from that. But
yeah, this is the 50th year that we've had our basketball camp.
Oh, congratulations!
1965, Coach Louis Mills, Lou was coaching at University of Richmond at the time, and we were friends. And there was only one other basketball camp in the state of Virginia at the time, and we talked one day and said, why don't we start a basketball camp in the Richmond area? So we said, all right, let's talk about it. So he went up to Richmond, and I came out here to Randolph-Macon, and he talked to the people at Richmond, and I talked to the people at Randolph-Macon about having a basketball camp on campus. And after talking to both parties, decided that this would be the best place to do it. We could have started in Richmond, but we started here in 1965, and I obviously had no idea in 1965 that I'd still be doing basketball coaching and basketball camps 50 years later. But this is the 50th year that we have had camps. Started right at Crenshaw Gymnasium in 1965, and we're still there.
Oh, that is wonderful.
Haven't been there the whole 50 years, but we're back there again, yeah.
Well, that is really wonderful. What an accomplishment. And hope you really have something to celebrate this afternoon when that camp ends this week. Yeah. Well, Coach Paul Webb, thank you so much for coming and sharing your memories with Making Memories.
Oh, you're quite welcome, and it's been a pleasure, no doubt.